So today we're taking a pretty hard left turn from analyzing DNA sequences with mega and button pushing programs. We're taking a pretty hard left turn to run a Linux operating system. Um, so so this week and next, really, I mean, we're in the terminal pretty much for the rest of the semester. So we'll slowly work up to driving this spaceship, um, so so we can do our own analyses. All right, so this is a Linux operating system. This server is kept in a separate space. I honestly have no idea where it is. Um, I mean, I know which building it's in, but I've never seen it before. But I manage it, I operate it, add people, remove people, add programs, whatever. Nonetheless, point being, um, we uh, we have to. It is ironic that to do the most fancy bioinformatic analyses, we have to use the oldest tool in computation. So the first really popular operating system was a Unix operating system. Um, but in the 80s, we start to see new operating systems derive. So we start to see the Mac become available and also the PC. Now the Mac is effectively a really fancy Linux. There's more uh, tools. Hold on, audio low. Maybe I can fix that. Maybe. Um, Audio, that's strange. Hold on. Maybe better. Oh, maybe too loud. I'm trying. Let's see. I've messed around with a few buttons. I don't know if it's better or worse. Or the same. Let me know either way. Okay. Okay. So I lost my train of thought. Linuxy things. Yay. Um, so Unix is the first. Mac is derived from a Unix, and Windows went in a totally different direction. So their operating system was a little bit different. Nonetheless, both Macs, both Linux, Unix, etc., will all have the same structure, like an operating system format. And so I'm going to bring that up briefly, just an image that kind of describes really any operating system. I know I can't really draw on this yet. That's okay. But what we're looking at is effectively a tree structure that organizes an operating system. So we know an operating system to be a collection of programs and folders. And so there's a default folder construction in a Linux operating system. And so we call that the very base, the very first directory where everything is in is this backslash. And so that backslash is also called root. Let me know if this font is okay for everybody. I can increase the font if I need to. Just let me know if that's a problem. But anyways, this backslash is equivalent to root. And we call this the root because it very much resembles a tree structure. And so the base of a tree is a root. And then we expand up that to grow our leaves. So pretty much all of these directories are kind of leaves in the tree analogy. So again, the base is the root. And we can see a whole bunch of directories in that main root directory. So I'm going to say directory and folder. They're both synonymous. It means the same thing. So we'll see additional directories within the base. So etc, dev, home, user, var. There's others. So for example, there's like 17 or 18 different directories in here: mount, perl, media, opt, proc, run, etc. But all of these others, so etc's, dev, user, var, etc., these are the main directories that allow an operating system to run. That's where all of our programs are at. That's where a lot of scripts are at. That's where a lot of maintenance reporting is happening. And you can't touch any of those directories, because if you start touching and messing around with them, you're bound to break the operating system. And so what we'll see is this home directory. And this home directory is where you can do your work. Furthermore, this is the home directory is where we keep the user accounts. So if you're running Mac, you already have this. It's not called home in a Mac though, it's called users. But nonetheless, it's the same idea. You can't touch any of the other folders without providing a password to do so. And so Linux is already really kind of a secure OS, because if you want to change anything in the OS, anything outside of this home directory, you have to provide a password, and you have to provide a super user password. If you don't know that password, you don't get to change anything. So currently, I am in my home directory. So the first command that I'm going to walk us through is pwd. And pwd stands for print working directory. It basically means where I am in the OS. That's what pwd means. And so whenever I run pwd, it's going to give me a path. And so this whole thing, this \home \envandueg is a path. And it's a path to where I am currently located at in my OS. I'm currently in my home directory, that's envandueg, that is listed in home. That is part of root. And so these backslashes are very important because they divide our operating system. It tells us which directories we're in. So for example, if I'm looking at this graph, oh, not that one. No, what have I done? So if I am looking at this graph and say I want to be in user lib, that path would be \user for the first directory, and then within that directory I am in the lib directory. So this structure, again, it helps us tell where we are or how we describe a directory or a folder or a file location. And so that will always be true. If I were going to say home Jono photos, that path would be \home who'd I say? Jono and \work. Right, that would be a path to this directory. Oh my gosh, same thing. And it just basically tells us to follow these directories. So we have the root to home to Jono to work. Okay, and so that's how this operating system is designed. It's set up, and it's how we can describe where is what. And so Windows does the same thing, but it's a little more cumbersome. It's going to be like C period, I think C colon, then the opposite backslash. So the opposite backslash, or C colon backslash, weird backslash. It's just the opposite. And then like users name or something. So Windows and Linux all roughly do the same thing. It's just how we denote that. in Linux and Macs, etc., we divide our directories by the common backslash. That's basically a shift your question mark. Okay, so pwd tells me where I'm at, but if I want to see the contents of the directory, that command is ls. And so ls is a command that basically means list contents, list folder contents. Right, that's what it translates to. So whenever I ls, it's going to tell me all of the directories and all of the folders in my home. Right, so these are mine. You should see nothing because you're a brand new user. You've had nothing set up on the server. You should see absolutely nothing whenever you ls. But okay. So I'm going to walk through like 6 commands that can that help us navigate this system. So for one, I don't want to put everything into this home directory. Like if I left all of the files that I've ever created out into just the home directory, it will look like absolute garbage. And you know, some people have a habit of pretty much leaving everything on their desktop. They make a file, they make a folder, they put it on their desktop, and their desktop gets wicked cluttered. You can't read anything. The same thing can absolutely happen here. If we don't organize our desktop, if we don't organize our file structure, this will get messy and out of control really fast. So the first command, besides ls is probably the most important command. Not the most important command, but I need to run it to get to our second most important command. And so that's going to be make dir. And make dir stands for make directory. And so how you call this is going to be make dir and the directory you want to name. So dir name. Recognize that's not literal. I'm just saying if I'm going to make a directory by a specific name, it's going to be make dir and then that name. So I already have a directory called test. I don't think I have anything relevant in test. I probably do. I have enough important stuff in test that I don't want to touch. So, but I'm going to move test somewhere else. Don't pay attention to what I'm doing. Okay, all right. So I need to make a new directory. I'm going to make a new directory. And I'm going to call it test because we're going to play around in that. So I'm going to make dir and my dir called test. Okay. And so whenever you make dir and then ls, now you should see a directory, a folder named called test. I don't know what color that's going to be in for you. For me, it's blue. All of my folder names are in blue. All of my text file names are in black. And program names are going to be in green for everything that's going to be in my directory. Okay, so I had to make this directory so I can use probably the most common command, and that's cd. And cd stands for change directory. And how I use it is by cd, change directory, and then the dir name. So if I want to go into test, if I want to change my current working directory from my home to test, I'm going to go cd test. Okay, and just like you, nothing should be in it. Nothing should be here. And when I pwd again, it's going to tell me I'm in home test, home me test. All right, that's the directory I can do. I'm currently in. And so pwe isn't necessarily like a really common command, but whenever you're just starting out and you're just starting out and you kind of forgotten where you're at, PWD helps remind you where you currently are located. Okay. So almost always, so CD and LS are almost used simultaneously. You can't call them simultaneously. If I do that, it's going to complain, like it's going to ask I can't change directories to anything called LS because LS doesn't exist. Right? I can't do two commands simultaneously. I can only do one at a time. But nonetheless, anytime I CD into a directory, I'm going to LS. So I can see what's in those files and also make sure that I know I'm in the right directory. I'm where I should be. Okay. Now you'll see me push a button, or you'll see me run a command called clear pretty frequently. And so what I'm doing is clearing the screen. None of my screen contents go away. I'm just moving it all to the top. Right. So if I run clear, all of this stuff's going to go away. My cursor is back at the top, but recognize I can scroll up and I still have all of the commands that I've run up to this point. I'm just clearing because at some point your cursor will just get to the bottom of the screen and it's kind of a pain to deal around with. So if you don't want to be looking at the bottom of your screen, you can clear to get your way back to the top. It's just it's not a super important command, but it helps make your computing experience a little bit more polite. Okay, so we've seen CD and LS. We've seen make dir. So make dir is commonly used. It's not one of the most common, but it's absolutely crucial to know how to use it to mess around with this stuff, right? So right, this is our tool to do bioinformatics, and it's kind of like the equivalent of a microscope to do microbiology. We have to learn how to use the microscope before we can do our microbiology. It's just this is a really complex and much slower learning curve to get a hold of. But nonetheless, we got a lot of time. We'll take our baby steps and we'll see what's happening. Okay, so again, I'm going to run a command that's not super common, but it is necessary in the beginning to demonstrate what we're doing. So that command is going to be touch. And so touch makes an empty folder, an empty file. And I will run it by doing like touch test.txt. Again, you know me, when I'm just messing around, I like to use test. But either way, that's going to be a file name, touch file name. So, for example, I'm going to do touch test.txt. And again, it's just going to make an empty file. Okay. And so whenever I ls, we now see a new file exists called test. Yay. Okay. And so this brings me to like the next thing about these commands that we're using. So cd, ls, is that all of these commands have additional options. Like every single one is going to have additional options. So if we want to how to go from here. So ls, let's see what happens. AHELP. There we go. Clear that away because that's a lot of garbage. So almost every command has options, and we call options by doing command, this is just generic, command space dash option. And it kind of depends on the program, right? ls is indeed just a program. It's a command, but it's also a program. Sometimes it will be a dash option. Sometimes it will be a dash dash option. And so this will be universal among all commands regardless of what we're playing with. So for example, I'm not going to go through the entire help manual of ls just yet, but one of the most common options of ls is -l. So space -l. Right, so this is an option that will list additional properties of our file. So it tells us who the owner is, tells me I'm the owner of this folder, and the 0 next to it means that the file is empty. It has no bits. So it's always going to be like properties, so we're not going over properties yet, but all of these dashes are W's. These are properties of the file. And then ownership. And then file size. Date created, date, time, and the name. Right, so these are just additional properties of the file whenever we do an ls-l, right? Because that's one common option. And I may move to a directory that I have full of contents to demonstrate this, because we're just looking at a file of 0. It's created today by me, and we know it's a file name. And so whenever I make directories, and this, so I probably have slightly complained about white space in file names, or white space in text. And the reason I complained about white space before is because Linux takes white space, literally it's probably not the right word, but for example, I can't make a file name that's called, let's see if I do touch for a second, right? So if you wanted to make a file that has 2 words in it, and I try to touch it, what's going to happen is it's going to make 2 different file names. Because it's reading that white space as a new command or a new file type. And so white space gets really dangerous on a Linux command. So white space has meaning, and white space can get really irritating in downstream analyses. I worked at a company for a while that was Linux, but also got onto Windows OSs or Windows machines to query data. Fine, but whenever you get to a Windows machine, Windows doesn't complain about white space that much, right? You can have white space in a directory name, no problem. But Linux complains about that, and you get this weird, really awkward incompatibility because of this white space issue. So I've introduced Camel Hump before, but if you want to make a file or a folder that's spaced, that has 2 words in it, you can either do touch first second as a camel hump, or first _ second. I try to avoid dashes in my file names, but either way, these 2 are more appropriate than white space, because now we'll have our both files appropriate, right? We made our files appropriate, as opposed to hiccups, right, with first space second. It gave us nothing, or it gave us 2 individual folders, 2 individual files. Okay, and all these are empty. But again, our timestamps are a little bit different, so that's always kind of handy to figure out when you wrote a file. Another one that's really relevant, ls-h. And so -h gets really helpful because what this stands for is human readable. And so, like, don't pay attention to what I'm doing for a second. Don't just ignore what I'm doing. I'm just getting to a bigger folder. Yeah. So I have all of these files that are of varying sizes and not quite days created, but reading this file size is really uncomfortable to actually look at. I can't tell how big that file is. But I can do LSH, and it's going to turn that list, that number, into a readable format. Right? That's easier for my brain to read. So now instead of seeing this big long 13 million number, I know that this stands for 13 megabytes, right? Or 2.6 kilobytes, or 43 bits, etc., etc., etc. So it's not uncommon. One of my most common commands is ls-lh. And recognize I'm putting a space in between ls and the -lh. So I can see this, all of my file types, how big they are, and when they were created. Okay. Sometimes I will move really fast. Don't pay attention to it. We're not there yet. But ls, ls-lh. And so another nice option would be ls-lrt. And so what that does is it's going to sort my files based off of the timestamp, from earliest to latest, ls-lrt. Not one of my most common, but nonetheless pretty helpful at times. And as I mentioned, every program, every command will usually have a help menu. So if I do ls-help, let's see what happens. It will give me all of the potential options for the ls command. And so everything's going to have this. I think CDS or CD has a help menu. Maker is going to have a help menu. Touch is going to have a help menu. But we can at least look through the ls help menu. And so we see a command -a, which is equivalent to all. And so it's going to list all directory, all files, even those that are hidden, right? So let's see, D directory F, let's see, there's blah. ls-I, ls-L, there's the -L, that's the long listing format. Oh, I missed H. There's H. So there's ls-H, so it's human readable for readable format, etc. Most options you will never use. Most options of every command you will never use. A lot of times you're just going to run the default. Okay. But sometimes you will need to, like, oh, I forgot which file I embedded first, or which file is the largest, then you can kind of use the sort tool. Because, yeah, let's see if I can, oh, my putty sucks. Let's see if I can find R. Little r, not big R. Reverse, yeah, reverse. So it's part of using the sort. So -S, ls-lrt, sort by modified time. So -T is sort by modified time. -R is reverse. So if I do ls-lt, it's going to give me the reverse order. So what was made first, or what was made most recent, and what was made oldest. But if I add that LRT or LTR, it doesn't matter. The order doesn't matter. Also recognize that these two commands are equivalent. Right? These two things are equivalent. You can run either one of those. Doesn't matter. But yeah, so if I ls-lrt, then it's going to give me the oldest file first, and then the most recent file latest. As I mentioned, we get to the bottom of the screen. It's kind of a pain to look at, so I can clear to get back to the top. And so I'm in this test. And say I want to get back to my home directory. the most common thing with CD is going into a directory and moving out of a directory. And so to move out of a directory is CD period back. And so this period back slash is equivalent to the directory above. And so whenever I do CD period backslash, it's going to take me back to my home directory because now I'm one directory above where I currently was at. CD period slash. And now that I'm back in my home, I can find my hidden files as well with my ls-la, because A stands for all. Again, I can do, just to demonstrate, I can do a --L or a -A. I can do both. And so if I just, whenever you do this, you should see hidden files. So hidden files are invisible whenever I ls, lh, or anything like that. And these invisible files are defined by a period. Sometimes we need them, sometimes we don't. But recognize, as part of hidden folders, you have this period and a to period. And so this is already kind of built in. So whenever you do a CD period, it's already built in. It's just saying I'm going backwards. I'm going backwards one directory. A period just means here. So if I do a CD period, it means nowhere. It means directly here. Period backslash just means where I'm currently at. So if I do CD period, I move nowhere. I'm still in the same location. But nonetheless, CD period this period is important, as well as a period backslash. Both of these are important commands or important properties. We'll see this become more relevant later, but period backslash is super common to move around your operating system. So again, I can go into test, pwd, give me my directory, cd period back, ls again, or pwd, and we can see I moved into test and then moved out of test. So cd is how you navigate ultimately through this operating system. So I can do cd root to go to my very base root directory. Again, you cannot, I don't think, let's see if I can probably look in a lot of these directories. So I think I can go to cd home. And so I can see all of the users on this operating system, but I don't think I can go into any of these. I'm going to get a permission denied if I try to go into anybody else's home directory. Okay, but I can get back into my home directory by doing cd in Vanduay. Now, another thing that I want you to get comfortable with now is your tab button. Because we've seen this in R, tab autofills. And tab will give you options if you can't autofill. If you can't autofill, it means that there's more than one file that starts with a letter of interest. So I'm going to get back into my test where I have all of these files. And a lot of them start with first. So if I try to say ls first, if I do fi, I can tab. But it's only going to tab as far as it can, right? Because we see multiple files that start with first. But if I want to see the remaining files that start with it, or all the files that start with first, I can tab twice. And so that's going to bring up all the other options. So if I do, now I can put in the underscore, hit my tab, and it will autofill to fill that all the way out. Alternatively, I can put in my capital S to autofill all of this file name. And so I introduced this first because I really want you to get into a habit of using your tab and not spelling out words. because spelling out words is long, it's tedious, and you're very likely to write something wrong and not understand why you're not moving into a directory because you misspelled. Again, every letter matters, and if I misspell, for example, if I try to do forced, it's going to say, I don't know what this is. It's because it's misspelled, right? There's nothing in that directory that's called forced. So you can get around spelling errors by just using your tab to autofill. Tab. Options, so we've talked about options, touch, tab. Also, same thing with RStudio. If you use your up arrow, you can bring back old commands. Again, that saves a lot of time whenever you're manipulating this stuff. Whenever you're on this operating system and you're manipulating and moving around, you can use this up button to bring up old commands. Very, very helpful. Save some time. Up and down. Very, very handy. Okay. And so the last command, not that, the last command that I want to mention is the easily the most dangerous command in all of Linux. And that's the RM button, which stands for remove. Because you'll see, if I remove first, second, if I run this command, so that's how it works. RM is RM file name. That's how to use the RM. So if I want to get rid of first, second, I can do RM first, second. Okay, now it's gone. And recognize, Linux did not ask me if I want to remove this file. It's just going to remove it, and it's going to be gone forever. So RM is very, very risky, and I assure you, I have deleted entire folder contents of important information before. So it's risky, it's necessary, but RM, let's see, look at our help menu. We can do, in the beginning, if you're really nervous about the RM, if you want a prompt, do I want to remove this or not, you can do a -I command or a -I option. So I can do RM clear that. RM-I first. I just want to get rid of first. Not R. I. Risky. Do I want to remove that? Yes, I do. I can just use a Y to do so. So if you're a little nervous about it, especially in the beginning, if you're a little afraid of the RM command, as you should be, you can do a -I option, so you get an interaction. You get a question mark about it. But no, so RM second, and I can do two files at once. So I can do a RM test and first second. Now recognize I just use my tab to autofill, so I don't have to type all that out. Again, it takes forever, and you're likely to make a mistake. And now I have nothing in my directory. Okay, but let's say I have a full directory present that I want to get rid of. So RM won't work. I'm going to get a complaint. If I just try to do RM test, it's going to give me a complaint and say I can't do that. It's a directory. So your option to remove directories is RM-R directory name. And that's going to remove directories. Move folder directory. Right, that's what's going to happen. So test. And now that's gone. I have no complaints. That directory is now removed, and everything inside of it is also gone. And so that option is also present in the help menu. So if I do rm help, see if I can do one help. Nope, I gotta do two. rm-help. This R command is recursive. It stands for recursion. And so what recursion does is kind of like keep doing something until I can't do it anymore. And we can kind of summarize recursion. So recursion is a really important theme in computing. But if we want to provide an image of what recursion looks like, it's kind of like that, right? It's calling itself until indefinitely, infinitively. So whenever we call a recursive command, it's going to, especially the recursive rm-r, it's going to enter that directory. If there's another directory, enter that directory, then remove everything it can. Move back one step, remove everything it can. Remove back one step, remove everything that it can. And so that's recursion. That's kind of an idea of recursion in computation. But it's probably more explanation than necessary. If you just want to get rid of a directory name, you're going to have to do an rm-r. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, we've talked about these commands. We've talked about pwd, cd, ls, rn, make dir, and clear. So we've learned like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 commands to start manipulating our operating system. We've talked about an absolute path, command options, touching files if we need to, tabs as necessary, and the up arrow. Whoops. And so this list of commands is going to grow quite long. However, it's probably only like 15 commands or so to get an operating to be able to manipulate an operating system well. And so we'll expand this list out on Wednesday to understand more of our commands. But nonetheless, I would definitely encourage you to kind of keep a list of running commands and what they do, right? pwd, print working directory, cd, change directory, etc., etc., etc. Cd, period, slash, period, backslash, right? Okay. So I'm going to call it there. We'll move through the operating system, more of these commands on Wednesday, and the more we do it, the easier this will get. But nonetheless, it is a very painful, very slow learning curve. But until then, I'll talk to y'all later.